Hey everyone, it's the end of the year and I would love to tell you about my top 20 reads this year. I'm going to work my way backwards from number 20 all the way to my top book of the year. So here we go. All right, number 20 is one I just recently listened to on an audiobook and immediately shared with my boyfriend. I basically just started the book over from the beginning, and that is Legends and Lattes. This is such a cozy book that I could not get enough of it. The descriptions of the drinks that they make are really great, but I think my favorite part is just how they discovered new drinks and a little ratkin character named Thimble, and he makes some delicious pastries, so they get to discover things like cinnamon rolls for the first time. And as you can imagine, there is some pretty intense feelings about those cinnamon rolls. This book is perfect for a break between some of those bigger fantasy without losing the fantasy vibe. And it's a comfy read through and through, and it definitely deserves a place on my top 20. Okay, number 19 is one I actually have on my shelf, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This book made it on the list 100% for the atmosphere that this author creates when she writes. I still think about the world that is described in this book, and I would pay big dollars to visit like a theme park or a speakeasy or a hidden book club of my own that replicated the kind of feel that you get. It's such a good combination of magical world and mysteries, and just caters to the nerdy book lover. The reason why it's a little bit lower on my list is because I do think the book went too long. I was telling people I wish I could just give you a chunk of this to read because I know this wouldn't be your type of book, but I still want you to experience those great feels that I did. Number 18 is a Becky Chambers book, and you will see a few of them on this list. This is Record of a Spaceborne Few. It is book number 3, I think, in the Wayfarers series. Of the 4 in this series, this is definitely the least favorite of mine, but as you can see, it still definitely made the top 20 because Becky Chambers is a phenomenal writer. I think one of the main reasons is a little bit lower than some of the others is that I feel like the big resounding question about life that Becky Chambers is known for didn't quite hit me as hard in this book as it did in some of her others, but I just still loved it completely. I think it wrapped up so well. You get to know the characters. They feel like a part of your life in such a short amount of time, and just wonderful. Please read all of Becky Chambers' books if you have not. Next up, we have Shadow of the Fox. This is one of those books that is just cute and fun. And I say that and it's actually a kind of dark book and has like a darker, maybe not a dark book, but it has a tragic ending, I would say. But yeah, I just was happy to read this. It was a good plot. It had a good romance. I'm ready to read the next one because I need to know what happened. This follows have I been telling you what any of these books are about? So this follows a kitsune who her temple gets burned down because people are trying to find a magic scroll. There are 3 pieces to the scroll, and she actually happens to save her piece, and is on the hunt to find the other temples. And she meets a demon, if I remember right, that tries to trick her, but she tricks him, and they end up going on this journey together, both just hoping to find the next scroll, but only one of them can have what they need. It's funny to know that they're each kind of tricking each other, watch them fall in love, all while knowing that this can't possibly end well. Book number 16 is Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency by Douglas Adams. I have read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and seen the movie, so I was I'm not really sure what I'm getting into, but I was hopeful. And it ended up really surprising me, which I think is why it made it onto this list. Just the fact that I thought it would be, I'd get to the end and be like, oh, okay, that was nice. And instead it like stuck with me. It had great twists. The way all the pieces came together was really just so well done, because you have some time travel and random characters in different spots of the world, and somehow they all manage to find their way together in the end. And at the beginning, it really truly seems impossible given the randomness of all of these things. And it still had that little like quirk and fun that you would get from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Book number 15 is Lore Olympus, Volume 2. I read Volume 1 earlier, and you'll see it on this list. The art is gorgeous. I love a good mythology retelling, so it was just really one of those perfect books for me, right in my wheelhouse, and so I couldn't help but pick up Volume 2. Again, just gorgeous color art. It's beautiful. The story in this one was not quite as engaging as Volume 1, but it's definitely a setup. It's definitely a great continuation. There were some moments that just like got to me, and you can tell that other characters along the side, like Artemis and Hera, are all starting to become bigger pieces into this story. I would happily reread this over and over again. Book number 14 is one I listened to an audiobook, and that is Leviathan Wakes. This was a beast and somewhat intimidating, I think, because I know how much people love it. I know how big of a series it is. I know that it has an adaptation. And so I feel like I had a lot of hesitation going in, just because like I was a little bit overwhelmed by like, what if I don't like this? But I did. It was great. It was a little bit long. I felt like I kept thinking it was going to be over, and then it wasn't. And I think that happened about 4 times. It kept just bringing in these twists and these epiphanies that blew my mind. I feel like it ended with just like this universe in chaos. There were some great characters. I think this book does a really good job of unlikable characters that you can still root for, but you know they're just not quite what you would call good people. It is one of those books that is hyped up and worth the hype. Book number 13, I think, is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is another one where I really liked the budding romance. The ending, I was less certain about, but I think it's just such a unique environment, unique story, while still giving you that fantasy feel that I crave. I always just kind of love the trope when someone accidentally summons a demon or a genie or whatever it is. So in this book, the main character accidentally summons a Jinn that is like a Jinn warrior who has a tragic past. Their journey to a city called Devabad and how people react to them in Devabad. There's a lot of scheming in this book. I think every single character you meet has their own agenda. And again, very interested to see what happens in the rest of this series, because the amount of like plots that are set up in this is crazy. Book number 12 is Faithus Hawk. This is the second book in a duology. I think one of the things I love about this series so much is the unique magic system. It's all centered around a society with a caste system where everybody has magic in their blood based on birds. And so there is, you know, the top tier is the phoenix. There are hawk warriors. There are peacocks who can kind of glamour. Our main character is of the crow caste, which is a very shunned group of people. They are the only caste that is immune to the plague. And so people feel like they are kind of responsible for a lot of different bad things. They are attacked and ridiculed, but they are also the people that can collect the bodies of plague victims. They are a necessary piece of this society. In the first book, you follow one of the girls as she is trying to save a runaway phoenix and his hawk. I would definitely recommend this. It is a little bit more YA if that's your speed. This is a great magical book. It is something that like felt totally new because it was a magic system I'd never seen before. All right, up next, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I read this with my book club and was very surprised because this is not my typical genre. In fact, I usually stay away from books like this because I can't really do scary things. So I was a little bit nervous, a little bit hesitant, but also excited at the same time. And this like blew me away, really. I don't know that it made me want to read more in this genre, because I feel like it would be hard to find a book like this, but maybe not. If you know books like this, tell me all about them, please. But it was one of those where it's like such a slow book, and you kind of sink into the lives of these middle-aged housewives, and you're kind of just chugging along, and then all of a sudden this huge, scary event happens. And the scary events in this book, and why I think it's different than what I imagined it would be, is because the scary events were things that felt still possible, if that makes sense. Like, one of them has to do with rats, one of them has to do with cockroaches. They're things that I could imagine happening to myself. It's not something out of this world or so gory and over the top. All right, let's get into my top 10 with Saga Volume 3. I have now read 3, 4, and 5, and really all of them could be in this list. But I stuck with this one because it was the one that really showed a great mix of the love in this family, the struggles of this family, the wildness in the plots, and the true dilemma that they all face. It was such a good balance of what is going on in this series that I think it is my favorite aside from book 1. I have talked about this series a lot, so I'm not going to explain a lot aside from a love story in an intergalactic war. This one, the stakes felt a bit higher because we went from learning characters and on the run to there are enemies knocking at our door. So again, this not only a great balance, but you can see the shift start to happen in this series. Number 9 is my next Becky Chambers, Closed and Common Orbits. This, like I said, has some of those big, profound questions. And the one here is all about AI and like, where do they fit in our society? How much respect? How real are they? How much do we treat them like they are a person and have rights? I think it is a slow build, but wraps up really nicely. And again, just really great characters, especially after the way book 1 ended and the stakes involved with Lovelace, who is the main character. There's a lot going on with her and one of the other characters in book number 1. I wish I'd seen a little bit more of that in book number 2, but I totally understand the way it went and feels like they got the story that they should get and that they deserve. And it was great to get to see them as the highlighted character. For book number 8, I'm going to go with Fable. Again, one of those just like joy to read, really fun. It's a pirate book, and I don't really read many of those high seas kind of feel. And so it was a good book to throw in the mix. I did read book number 2 and found it more middle of the road than the first book. I think it wraps up nicely as a duology, and I still definitely recommend checking it out if you're someone who enjoys that seafaring vibe. I think I just enjoyed the atmosphere and the plots. More than anything specific, I just hadn't read a good ocean adventure book in a while, and this filled that need for me wonderfully. Number 7, Bloody Rose by Nicholas Ames. If you like fantasy, if you like D&D, if you like adventure, if you like cool characters, all of those you'll find in this gem of a book. Definitely read book 1 first. I mean, man, is this a absolute treasure of a read. The characters are so incredible. The powers that some of them have, the backstory you get as you go along, they are all traveling, trying to kind of make their way in life after the ending of book 1, and I just thoroughly enjoyed the way this went. Bloody Rose is the daughter of the main characters in book number 1, although you don't get to see her very much. So getting to be introduced to her and seeing who she is was so rewarding. I think she was a little bit different than what I had imagined, but by the end of the book, it totally made sense. Just absolutely wonderful. All right, number 6. Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I didn't really know what to expect. It's been talked about so much on BookTube, but I just, for whatever reason, never picked it up, and I wish I had sooner. I am right now in the middle of starting book number 3 and have kind of burned through the series once I started it. This is another one of those magic systems that I really love and feels somewhat unique. I think the way the destiny of two characters kind of intertwines, the challenges they face are all very cool, but I think the best part is the school itself, which is its own character really, because the kids are locked in this school that gives them the food that they need, gives them the book that they need. It's definitely a survival of the fittest because you can absolutely not survive. The main character starts out super angsty and a little bit over the top snarky, but I think as you settle into the experience, you just realize how much that just kind of fits her life. We're at our top 5, and I have Lives of Lochlomora. I did listen to this on audiobook as well, which is kind of hard because the voice acting is wonderful, but very intense, like posh British accent that can at times be hard to, like, you really just have to focus, which is sometimes difficult with an audiobook. Definitely no happy endings here. A lot of character death and tragedy, a lot of high stakes, heists-ish kind of feel, and the band that you start with, you just end up rooting for them so strongly, and then it all kind of falls apart. But our main character, Lochlomora, is such a wonderful main character. So snarky, so witty. He's not like one of those characters that can do everything, but he is certainly arrogant enough to maybe feel like he can. And he does hold his own, so you can definitely back that up, that arrogance up. But watching his roller coaster of a life is stressful, but so enjoyable. Book number 4 is Lore Olympus Volume 1. This could have easily been my top book. Any of these last few are just so great. I love them all. I have reread, I think, bits of all of them because they really stuck with me. Again, I'm gonna show off the artwork in this graphic novel because it is so wonderfully done. There are scenes in this that just make you fall in love with love, and there are scenes in this that are hard, and there's trigger warnings for this for sure. I mean, any mythology retelling has some difficult pieces to it. I love the introduction that is set up in this. Anytime I need like a pick-me-up and I'm feeling down, this is one of those books that I go to read pieces of to just give me hope. I have Shauna Maguire for book number 3 in An Absent Dream. This is following a girl, Lundy. She's a very serious young girl who finds her way into a world with hard set rules. And you watch her grow up in going back and forth between that world and our world. And for a novella, it really shows a wide scope of that growing up process. Again, tough decisions that really make you feel for the main character. And I didn't know what decision Lundy was going to make at the end, but either one I think would have broke my heart. I just am always amazed at how Shauna Maguire can put so much into these novellas and make them so beautiful and so tragic at the same time. I feel like every single one just has stunning worlds, stunning characters, just enough darkness to lock you in. Book number 2 is one I just recently read, and it is my last Becky Chambers, Galaxy and the Ground Within. This is probably my favorite of the 4. Maybe the first one, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, because it's just a great introduction. But the species that are introduced in this just made my heart so happy. They are all so alien in the best way, and you get to learn so much about their culture through their backstories and through the plot really quickly. And it just felt like, again, a whole universe encompassed into a tiny book. I cannot give enough kudos to Becky Chambers because they just give you something incredible, incredibly magical every single time without magic really being a part of it. Book number 1, we have finally made it to this list. I feel like I've been talking forever. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. This is a debut novel, which I think makes it even more incredible. But when I think of fantasy and everything good about fantasy, I feel like you can find it in this book. It is like the classic adventure. We've got to go save the world. Let's get the band back together without feeling redundant. And it was some people say that like They knew where the plot was going, and they, you know, you kind of discover each band member one by one by one. That didn't bother me. I loved it. I loved getting to watch each character kind of stumble their way back into this group, and then watching them all come together at the end, I think, felt even more enjoyable. I will read anything Nicholas Ames writes because of it. Here are some of those top books. Let me know down below, what was your top book? Do you have a top book? Do you have a top 5? I just want to know everything. So tell me down below, and I will see everyone later. Bye, friends.